Hi, everyone, from me, Fluffy in my arms, Chocolate downstairs playing a game, and Brad and Ian and Eric and all that helped me get the Earthfiles YouTube channel going each week, and that I am so glad to get emails from some of you who are expressing great appreciation for having this hour each week. And I want to say how much I hope that we can get past this terrible, terrible time on the earth and back to something that is sane and open up more and more and more about we're not alone in this universe. And it was 25 years ago this week, one of the most public media covered UFO events of all time occurred the night of March 13th, 1997 in Phoenix, Arizona. I was reporting science, environment, and real X-Files news on national radio broadcasts with Art Bell for Dreamland and Coast to Coast AM that were reaching nearly 5 million listeners. And this past weekend, I found my original Phoenix Lights scripts, files, and the audio tapes of the interviews that I did with eyewitnesses, plus an East Coast source working for the Department of Defense on computer relays and satellites. There were a series of different-looking UFOs beginning around 7 p.m. local time and evolving until at least 10:30 p.m. on that March 13, 1997 series of events that began with an enormous V-shaped craft, followed by large orange glowing spheres and a large arc of lights videotaped and broadcast on television around the world. The first UFO that night was reported after 7 p.m. local time. It had a huge black V shape outlined by white lights. Some people called it a triangle. The huge craft was moving at about 2,000 feet altitude from the Phoenix direction south toward Tucson along the I-10 freeway. Watching it from their car moving the opposite direction from south to north on the I-10 toward Phoenix were Stacy Rhodes, a Tucson resident for 31 years, and the mother of 10-year-old Emily. They were traveling to a Phoenix sporting event with Emily's school friend, Stacy's 70-year-old mother, and her friend John Labriola. Stacy told me they were all astounded by the largest thing they had ever seen in the sky coming south toward them right over their car.
My friend, when he first said, "What in the hell is that?" it was right above the mountain peak. As we were headed towards Casa Grande, there's some small mountains that are 2,000 feet high.
So it was at least about 2,000 feet high when you first saw it?
Yes, because it had to have cleared those mountains.
Stacy Rhodes estimated the huge triangle was about 2 miles long, based on the 2 to 3 minutes it took for the triangle to pass over their car, traveling at 80 miles an hour. That was echoed by real estate developers who reported a huge triangle over their 1.8-mile-long housing development in which the huge triangular craft covered the length of the construction site.
It got dead quiet in my car, and the kids were saying it was a UFO, and I didn't know what it was.
And if it were that large and it didn't make any sound, that is extremely peculiar that there was no sound.
That was the first thing we said. After the thing passed, we all began to talk again, and it's like, my God, there was no sound. That was one of the first things we did notice was no sound.
When you had put your head back in that rear window and you were looking up right straight into the bottom of this object, could you see any stars at any edges?
No, it was so big I could not see the edges. Once it was over me, I could not look to either side through the back window and see any stars.
It was that big?
It was that big.
Like it really filled up the entire sky?
It blanketed the sky above me. When it did come over, I could see it was like a metal, blackish, grayish, bluish metal, like the bluing on a gun. Then the whole thing came over, and I remember thinking that it looked like the Borg on Star Trek. It had a pattern like a circuit board, or like the Borg. Do you ever watch Star Trek? And they show that big box that's called the Borg on there. And when they show it on TV, Starship Enterprise fly into a teeny tiny hole. And that's how big this thing was. It was like airplanes could land on top of this object. It could be a flying aircraft carrier or something.
It's really incomprehensible, isn't it?
Yes, yes. I can't imagine something that big in the sky, and I've seen it. And then it just floated.
And to be so silent.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, around 8:30 p.m. local time in Phoenix, real estate developer Max Saracen and his wife Shala were staring at the sky above their hilltop home, trying to understand what they were seeing.
Towards the northwestern sky was this huge V formation of lights. The most striking thing about these lights as it got closer and flew over our heads, it started to block out the stars. And it looked like it was very secretive. That was the impression I had from it, because it was completely silent, and from end to end, it clearly was easily over a mile long, if not 2 miles.
And about how low?
About 1,000 feet.
Whatever this was must have been illuminated from inside because you could see windows.
What shape were they?
Squared.
What was your response about what could this possibly be?
The UFO. You know, an extraterrestrial ship. It's a ship that doesn't come from our planet.
Towards the east were these 2 bright, fiery orange orbs, maybe about a mile apart, and they were still in the sky.
The fiery orange globes that Max Saracen saw probably were the same ones the truck driver Bill Greiner watched about 10:30 p.m. as well. Greiner was further south in the Phoenix suburb of Glendale, not too far from Luke Air Force Base. In the sky, he watched 2 large glowing objects, shaped, he said, like a child's top that spins.
And they were white and yellow, real bright white and yellow in the middle, and it had a red band around the middle of it that was pulsating. It was glowing. It wasn't like a light. It was like a glowing, pulsating band of red in the center of these things, 2 of them. It had like a shimmer to it, like heat beating on the hood of your car, and you see the heat waves from the sun.
Right.
It was like a little bit of distortion. Not a whole lot, but it was there. They were 2 solid objects. All of a sudden, I heard a lot of roaring going on, and I seen 2 jets come out with the afterburners on. We see these jets all the time over there. I've been delivering to this particular area for like 5 years, and, you know, we always watch the jets come out. You know, they come rushing out of there. But anyways, I never really noticed any at nighttime like this, barreling out of there with their afterburners on, huge flames coming out the back. The jets had no lights on except for little green lights underneath the bellies of them. 2 of them come flying out, and then there was 1 more right behind it. They took to the air. Immediately, as soon as they were airborne, they come flying up, almost right over me. They made a real sharp turn into the east and then veered right back to the southwest, and they headed right for that closest object that was in the sky in the southwest. And this is the astonishing part. To me, it's like, I still find it hard to believe it. As soon as the jets got to the object, this thing shot straight up, just like at Star Trek when it goes into warp. It was that fast. Before the jets got to it, the jets got right close to it, and phew, this thing just disappeared. It was just unbelievable. I mean, I never even seen where it went to. I mean, it just like vanished.
And it went straight up.
Straight up. I mean, it went boom.
And what happened to the jets?
The jets continued flying straight through wherever it was.
The question that all of us need to have answered is, what is it that the government perceives in these objects that warrants the scrambling of the jets? And what is it that's in these objects that always seems to take off at warp speed and disappear?
Yeah, right. I know now that the government's covering this up. And I also know that these things, whatever they are, they ain't from around here.
They wouldn't fall in the category of flares?
No. No way. No way. There are no flares. It wasn't anything like that stupid swamp gas or reflections they talk about. They were as real as the jets coming out of that base. They were as real as the truck I drove in. They were real, and I saw them, and they were solid, and they were scary as hell. You know, these things were like 5 times bigger than the jets.
Now, did you ever talk with anybody at Luke Air Force Base about their perspective on what you saw?
No. The people at Sky Harbor Airport, the air traffic controllers witnessed these objects flying around town that night.
Mm-hmm.
The colonel out there categorically denied any knowledge of anything over his base. Well, as soon as I heard that on TV, I know that they're lying.
Why do you think that Luke Air Force Base can say to the general public through the media that these are flares or whatever they say, and assume that that will be an explanation that will hold with the public when people like you and others have seen something quite different?
Well, I just think that they think that we're stupid. They think that everybody is stupid, apparently. But what happened is a serious thing, as far as I'm concerned. This is like our very security is at stake here. You know, if these things are flying around like this, and then I just start listening to all this other stuff about abductions and crop circles and
animal mutilation.
Yeah, all this stuff. I mean, what's going on here? Obviously, we're not alone.
6 months later, in September of 1997, I was talking with Jack Shulman, then chairman of the American Computer Company in Cranford, New Jersey, about the Phoenix Lights as evidence of an alien presence on our planet, no matter what our government said in denial. The cover-up included Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix trying to dismiss all the March 13, 1997 UFOs as flares. Further, Jack Shulman had released on AAC's website a 6-page article entitled "Express Your Opinion About Roswell." The website included new information that Jack said came from a well-connected consultant who knew that UFOs and their ET technology were behind the revolutionary transistor integrated circuits, digital signal processors, modems, and all that emerged from Bell Laboratories after those 1947 UFO crashes. Page 2 headlined, "Express Your Opinion About Roswell," and stated ACC's scientific consultant told them about materials in Roswell UFOs. Quote, "The materials require very advanced technologies to manufacture that did not exist in 1947 in order to produce them. Were you to search the entire deserts of Africa and Asia, you would not find a single piece of silicon sand that would match this miracle of conductivity. Patents were awarded Bell Labs in the 1948 and 49 era, indicating these alien marvels to be earth-shaking discoveries of scientists at Bell Labs such as Shockley, Bardeen, and Brattain. But were they in fact then only recently discovered in debris from an alien craft allegedly wrecked in Roswell, New Mexico on July 7, 1947, close quote. ACC was in fact founded in Cranford, New Jersey by former Bell Lab executives in 1970. Jack Shulman told me that his trusted consultant source insisted the U.S. Department of the Army hand-carried the very advanced UFO transistor and other technologies to Bell Labs in September 1947, harvested from the July 1947 UFO crashes in New Mexico. The consultant said the ET computer technology was at least 400 years in advance of human technology. Further, just like Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso wrote in his important 1998 book, The Day After Roswell, Jack Shulman's ACC consultant said that Bell Lab transistors, integrated circuits, digital signal processor, modems, and on, were all back engineered from the extraterrestrial technology first transferred to Bell Labs in September of 1947 after retrieval from the UFO crashes in July 1947, and went on to labs in AT&T and Lucent Technologies. Here now is an excerpt of my recorded interview with ACC's Jack Shulman in September 1997.
So this is the consultant's story. Has he ever indicated to you, if he had any knowledge, of which crash site, because there have been many, and which specific date that the particular extraterrestrial technology at the base of the semiconductor industry, which craft, at which location it was removed from?
Yes, he was referring to what has been called the alleged crash that was the Roswell, New Mexico crash site in 1947, within a few miles of an airbase adjacent to Roswell, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And site a little distant from it, something like a half a mile distant, represented two locations the military found devices at. Apparently, according to the consultant, one of the sites had devices that were intact. That site's never really been reported to the public. The other site had devices which, in fact, were quite badly damaged as a result of some form of a collision or a crash.
Did he have any understanding from anybody in the Defense Department or military or intelligence, in retrospect, in history, about what might have occurred to have two extraterrestrial vehicles come down near Corona and Roswell?
Interestingly, I believe from what he tells me that there was a surveillance suspected by the military of the testing site. The military was testing advanced weapons in the Roswell area, or actually developing advanced weapons tested elsewhere in the military arsenal. And they felt that there was surveillance going on.
Surveillance by extraterrestrials?
Yes, apparently. I think the feeling was that the testing and the explosion of nuclear devices may have attracted attention sufficiently to have caused some form of surveillance in 1947. He told me that there was a think tank that was put together under General Eisenhower to analyze very specifically how and why extraterrestrials might be monitoring human activities and how they could have, for instance, traveled here so fast. Because, you know, the span of years between the original Manhattan Project and the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not a long span of years. 1947, a short time later.
Yeah, it was only about 5 years later.
Correct. The interesting thing to the consultant was the feeling that these extraterrestrial beings possessed the ability to travel over great expanses, and that the size of the vehicles that landed in the Corona and the Roswell area were relatively small, like they were explorer craft or something along that line, perhaps associated with some kind of a base or larger vehicle capable of very, very, very high-speed interstellar travel. He indicated that the military put forth a think tank, a long-term project to develop its own surveillance, whether they are satellites or platforms, I don't know which, whose purpose was to observe observers that might come to this planet. He suggested to me that they did, and that they're maintaining such a platform at this time, which has also the secondary purpose of being able to keep track of various terrestrial space activities as well, but that it's fairly secret, this platform.
Whose platform is it?
I believe it belongs to a special operations group attached to the Electronic Communications Command and Control segment of the Air Force that's involved in military space. I can tell you that the consultant in this particular situation does not, even though he does have very, very, very high security clearance, does not have any restrictions on his ability to discuss this matter, simply because the information did not come into his possession as a direct result of his efforts on behalf of the federal government. The whole matter is so unusual that it almost needs to be dealt with in a historical, backward-looking perspective, as if it were a special or unique situation involving things that our laws and our legislation and our Congress and our people did not have any real preparation for dealing with. And then along came the folks that had dealt with Colonel Corso and brought Colonel Corso's facts to light. I became flabbergasted. All this stuff is new to me.
You did not know about Colonel Corso's book or work at all?
No.
Did the consultant ever mention anything about finding bismuth and magnesium in very thin micron layers together?
I believe he suggested to me that there was, in fact, other materials in use within the hull of the device, including some forms of metals that are similar to iridium, bismuth, magnesium. Experts who've analyzed the materials said that they were decidedly artificial.
And that relates to the phrase arranged in a microscopic array much more complicated than even now we humans have ever been able to assemble.
Correct.
And before we go to questions, I want to share a YouTube comment that I have received and my reply in this difficult time of COVID and Ukraine. One of your voices wrote me this: I have followed you for many years now. I find so much of your information has resonated at different moments with various other situations or information I've come across. I had a near-death experience many years ago, and I can confirm for my part that the tunnel of light is full of pure love, and that is real. And I was not really religious or spiritual prior to that NDE. During this week, I have found my own mental health crashing with the fear of nukes and wars, and it's been your videos the last few days that has helped give me hope. Thank you, and I am sending you so much love from Wales in the UK. And I thank you so much. I have been getting a lot of emails about your anguish and your worry and your fear. And I join you in feeling that this is as dangerous or more dangerous a time than since December 7th, 1941 for the United States, when we did enter World War II. I pray every day that that is not going to happen. But I would like to share with you, because I know that there is a lot of fear and concern. And it is times like this that we need each other. We need to be able to feel that we can say what is inside of our very souls and say it publicly, hear it publicly, and then reply publicly. Thank you, and so many others, for writing to me about your confusion and despair of where humans and Earth are headed now. And some days I have the same question, but I am writing to you today to hopefully help. You ask me, where do I get the strength to keep going? When I was 21 years old in Idaho, where I was born and raised, I was given a gift from what I call the divine field. I was hiking in the mountains in the Salmon River County country, where I was suddenly stunned to see all of the June summer flowers around me pulsing with orchid and white light. And then everything else, from the Earth's surface up to the early evening stars above me, were pulsing the same orchid and white light. And then a warm pressure raised my arms and hands in front of my face, and I heard a thought voice inside my mind say, "You are one with the light is one with you, and you are in the hands of God forever." Since then, that has been the solid ground that gives me strength that you ask about. No matter whether I'm investigating bloodless, trackless animal mutilations that law enforcement says the perpetrators are creatures from outer space, or interviewing people in the human abduction syndrome who say there is so much more to the universe than we understand. There are so many more dimensions, some that we cannot go into. or trying to get frustrated military whistleblowers on the record when they know the truth, that we're not alone in this universe, and that a complicated alien presence influences and manipulates our planet and human minds and lives. But there is nothing more that I want to understand than the 16-level chess game of advanced intelligences interacting with Earth and our solar system, and to reinforce for my listeners and audiences that the most important part of all Homo sapiens sapien is our souls. I'm convinced we recycle in reincarnation back toward the divine field in perhaps infinite numbers of lives. And I really mean that. And for those of you who feel pain now and are afraid, let me know. Write me. I am happy to write back in a time where I hope by this spring, into the summer, into the winter, and by next spring, that we are all in some new space, that the universe will be reinforcing our planet with higher and better frequencies than they've been for a long time. I'm counting on it. And so with that, a digital hug to all of you. And Ian, what questions and comments do we have now?
Good evening, Linda.
Yes, Ian.
Okay, Linda, first of all, I've got viewers tuning in this evening from all over the United States, from Argentina and Canada, and also Belgium, Brazil, and Bahamas.
Great. I'm so glad that we have an international audience, and thank you for being here tonight. And I hope that we're going to have an international feeling next week when we do our March 23rd equinox celebration of, we're now what, Ian, at 201,000 subscribers.
Yes, it's 201,207.
All right, and that's the celebration next week. And I think we have some really interesting recorded and video questions. And tonight, whatever you guys have on your mind, let's go, Ian, with what you have at the top of your list.
Well, we'll dive straight in there with the Phoenix Lights. Linda, can you ask Linda what her reflections are on the Phoenix Lights these days, now a quarter of a century later? What was the point? Who was behind it? Was it a communication of some kind? And a more specific question from another viewer is, what race or races could be in these triangular UFOs, such as the one over Phoenix?
I'm glad that you guys are thinking about those kinds of questions, because I think that it would be very interesting to go back to Buddy Bolton in the Bronx and ask him if he could remote view what was in the huge 2-mile-long triangle, what was in those big, huge orange globes that the truck driver said were at least 5 times bigger than any of the jets that were seemingly trying to fly toward them or around them, and then the jets flying away. Or that arc of lights that we all saw that was broadcast all over the United States and eventually the world. And that some of the lights came on, and people that I interviewed at the time, I physically was in Phoenix for a period of time after that. And there were people who told me that the scariest part to them was that those lights on the arc, it came over, there was an evolution in time. There was the huge, huge V-shaped or triangular-shaped object 2 miles long. That was in the beginning, somewhere between 7 to 8:30ish, and or maybe to 9. And then there were the orange globes that the truck driver, Bill Greiner, told me was, I think it was getting close to 10 p.m. when he saw those. And then there was the arc, that there was a lot of contradictions and arguments about where exactly was the arc of lights that made so many television headlines, and that some people said they kind of came on, and as they came on, they started thinking of sci-fi movies, and that's when they got scared. There was a man who had a big house up above Paradise Valley, and he was one of the people I visited, and he showed me exactly the tripod and the camera, set it up on the balcony. He said exactly where he was when he took that one of those recordings that was on television. And he let me look through the camera. There were arguments that the arc was over the Estrella Mountains going to the west of Phoenix. But where the man who was responsible for one of those videotapes set up his tripod with the camera on it, and I could look through it. I literally looked through the same camera. I was looking in a direction that would have ended up more over downtown Phoenix. Those were the kinds of confusions about that. Now, what could have been in for 7 to 10, 10:30, and why was there a presentation of these different forms and shapes? None of us that I know have the bottom line answer. But I will share tonight something that I can't put in the category of proven journalism. But it gives me pause because I found this in one of my files. And it was that on the day after, on March 14th, 1997, I got a phone call. It was a male voice that just started talking, and I have had that happen half a dozen times in my career. Some of those tapes I have. I was not taping on this one. So this is really recounting something that I remember and is not proven, but I think that it needs to be put out there because what is the relationship between some of the intelligences that interact with Earth and our military? The male phone voice said, wanted you to know that one of our most important DoD, which is Department of Defense, satellites, was melted last night while everyone was looking up in the skies at the UFOs in Phoenix. Click. Well, that is a provocative sentence. It may be true, it may not be, but it left in me a question that still goes on today. I have felt better learning about tall whites and Nordics and the idea that we have allies and very, very brilliant intelligences that still have not been introduced to us for reasons unknown, but that we are getting help. But it also leaves me with the same residue that I have had for the last 43 years, trying to get to the bottom of animal mutilations and human abductions, and why does the government have policies of lies and denial about something that seems as fundamentally deserving to the world population as knowing we're not alone in the universe, that the cosmos is teeming with consciousness, apparently. And if all those events in Phoenix were someone's threat, some retaliation, what preceded it? What does it mean if there was a DoD important satellite that was melted while all of this was going on in Phoenix? I don't have answers, but I think that these make doing a historic look back at a time when it seems to me that we should be moving toward the announcement, the global announcement. We're not alone, we have help, even though today with the terrible situation in Ukraine and all of the questions and trepidations that it leaves in all of us about what's in the future, that I hope that we're moving toward being able to open up all of this and understanding that there may have been all kinds of intelligences active in our skies for a very long time, and that it has not been clear to any human intelligence exactly what was in any given craft at any given time doing X, Y, and Z. And that's the 16-layer chess game that is so confusing and so challenging. So now I'm going to throw it back to you. If there's anybody listening who does have any factual information about whether a satellite was damaged during the March 13th, 1997 2 or 3 hours of UFO presences over the Phoenix area, please let me know. And you can, as far as I'm concerned, you can communicate safely by hard mail, probably as safely or more so than proton mail. And that's something I'm encouraging, because the more I hear from people who provide photos, videos, firsthand information, the more I can then come circling back to do a segment or a program on what I learned. So with that, Ian, let's move on to another question.
Well, take a breather for a moment. I'm going to go through the super chats this evening. It's been a busy night in the chat, and a lot of people have contributed. So
Thank
here
you.
we go. Moonbird.
Hi, Moonbird.
Forest Lady. Traz. Shane. Lightning Will, I Am Robin. Linda Winkler. Joan011. Diane Schroeder. Mark Petrie. Chris and Sue. Linda E. Materio. Caroline Boyce. Separate Reality. Isabella Pachetti Perkins. Transgressive Scientist. Renee Martin. Jessica Rodriguez. Brenton Landolfi. And last but not least, from Australia, Manda Panda, who celebrated her birthday yesterday. So happy birthday, Manda.
Hi, Manda Panda. I love it. I want to ask her, if you can, through the chat, does she raise pandas? Does she work with pandas?
Yeah, I'd like to know what the connection is, Manda. What's the connection with Manda Panda? And she's also said that she's had some experiences herself. She saw an outline of a huge ship that went over her house, probably about 20 meters high in the sky, and she describes it as big as a football, oval. It was cloaked, but the clouds and lightning gave it away. She says her son also saw 3 orange orbs flying next to the ship.
If I understand what you just said, it was an oval shape like a football, but that it was bigger than the house?
Well, I think you might have missed something off here. Perhaps you can give us some clarification in the chat. She just says it's big as football, oval, it was cloaked, but the clouds and lighting behind it gave it away.
I imagine she means the shape was like a football and it was large, but another association is how many times I have received reports where people have been either trying to get out of a thunderstorm, running, trying to get something into a house in a thunderstorm, but the thunderstorm is the context in which all of these people end up seeing a large UFO closer than is normal, making me wonder, what is the relationship between thunderstorms and the coming and going of these craft? Are they using something from the thunderstorms, or are they using the thunderstorms to cloak? I don't know. Another? Ian? Did we lose Ian? Okay.
Okay, she describes it as big as a football field. So for clarification,
wow.
She's done that. I was just back in the chat with her.
Yeah. 300 feet. Yeah, one of the big ones.
That's
Good.
right. And Linda, she's also says, other people have also recorded their own sightings here. Here's one who says, I saw the Phoenix Light craft as it left Las Vegas going over Henderson, Nevada. So an eyewitness there. And another one says, I saw a giant triangle craft when camping in western Arizona back in 2019. It had lights on it and it flew from the east to the west. I sent Linda information on it. So you may have information from Forest Lady about that one.
Ask her if she can write back in the chat. Was it the V-shaped, which I would call the first illustration of V, versus triangles that are straight across, where there's a difference between the V this way and the triangle like this? I would be very interested because I know that over the years that I have files on the big, huge triangles that are real triangles versus the much, much rarer V's that are just like flying V's with lights on them.
That's right. And in fact, several people are commenting on V-shaped craft or on triangular craft. One of the comments is here, I saw a V-shaped craft about 300 to 400 yards per side over Fort Lauderdale after Hurricane Wilma. Completely silent, black with no lights. It blocked the sky overhead and glided slowly away. That's when they could see the clear V shape on that craft.
And if it were 400 meters long, that would be at least 1,200 to 50, somewhere 1,200, 1,400 feet on a side.
That's right. And another person here describes seeing a giant triangular-shaped craft over southwest Virginia with military cargo jet and black dart-shaped jets flying under it. And that brings us to one of the other questions is, are some of these triangular craft our own or being flown by our own people?
Well, there is no one that has ever talked to me in any kind of confidential way or other about us being able to manufacture what was in the whole Phoenix situation, that 2 mile, the estimate of 2 miles, the real estate people coming up with the same kind of figure that Stacy and others, they guessed that it was at 2 miles long. We're not capable of producing 2 mile long craft that are flying in the skies of the Earth. So my assumption is those are other intelligences. But our human military or human intel working with non-humans inside of those craft, that is distinctly possible, but we can't say one way or the other unless we know, do we have positive, supportive, collaborative agreements, treaties, Space Force working with, if it's the tall whites, if it is the Nordics, who is it and who flies which craft? And that has always been one of the best kept secrets. It is extremely hard to be definitive about which craft, which size, which shape goes with which size, which shape non-human. That seems to be one of the challenges that they don't want us to know clearly. Ian.
Okay, Forest Lady confirms it was a triangular craft that she saw. And another one here, Oceanside Affirmations, saw plastic boomerang flying over the Salish Sea Pacific coast this fall. Very quiet, clear plastic looking. Lights were only clear white, no navigation lights, early evening just after dark, and there were 2 witnesses to that one.
Another question for any and all of you who have seen large craft, which means that they've been close to you relatively in the sky. Within 2 weeks after a sighting, have any of you had vivid dreams? Often there's a syncopation between seeing a craft, seeing it close, being awestruck, and staring for a long time, and then having a dream within 2 weeks, almost as if there is some sort of an effort on the part of a variety of intelligences to at least explain what happened. Or there is a syncopation in seeing a craft close with an abduction, and that the abduction can be the missing time and people don't remember it, but then that comes out in vivid dreams within 2 weeks or so of some kind of an encounter. So there is this issue of working through human minds, human dreams, that seems to be one of the routes of communication by whoever is in these craft. So that is a very interesting question to see how many of you may have had such an experience, a close-up and then vivid dreams. Okay, Ian?
Can we just remind people to hit the likes and subscribe, please?
Oh, yes, thank you very much. Because keeping our numbers increasing on YouTube helps Earthfiles YouTube, and it doesn't cost you anything, click on that red subscribe arrow and we'll see how much bigger we can get our audience. And if you like what we're doing, click on that like.
Okay. Linda, we've got several people suggesting that Buddy should also be remote viewing the Phoenix Lights. They would like to hear more about Buddy and Buddy's input on this sighting. And also, is there a way that they can contact Buddy?
We have put up his alien protocol. I was trying to remember, it's alien protocols at, and I don't remember if it's Gaia, but we can do that again. We've done Buddy, put that up in the last 2 months, 2 or 3 times inside of previous shows, and he is welcoming to having people contact him. So we'll try to make sure that we keep this around so we can give out Buddy's information. I am working with him on another remote viewing project that I hope within the next 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah, we will be back, and I think you will be fascinated. But every subject that we get into now, it seems like that, oh, I wonder what Buddy could remote view on that. And clearly, Phoenix Lights is another subject, and I'll ask him. And it may be, he and I have discussed this, that we could go into certain questions and do it on a somewhat like bi-monthly or every tri-monthly, and having a segment that Buddy does. And some of you have been sending me questions to ask him. So without overburdening him, I'm trying to get kind of a process where maybe if we do Phoenix Lights and this other that he and I are working on now, wait another couple of months and then we do it again. So anytime you have a question that you think would be interesting for Buddy to dive into with his serious psychic gift, send me an email or do a comment at the comment section of Earthfiles YouTube. Okay.
Okay, Linda, talking about the dreams, someone says here, I'm always seeing the future in my dreams from little on, from when she was little. I've kept this to myself, my jobs, family, even my past husband. Do you think it's a genetic trait implanted?
Well, that is, I think, an intelligent alternative to the idea that there would be ongoing communication, let's say from non-humans. Some people might have that, and that might be why they have such plentiful vivid dreams. But there always is this genetic component as well. And Brad just handed me the Buddy Bolton is at Alien Protocols, all caps, ALIENPROTOCOLS @gmail.com. So that's good for you guys who want to get in touch with Buddy and know that I am working with him on another subject, and we'll talk to him about doing Phoenix Lights, and email us or chat or comment on questions that you'd be interested in doing his remote viewing. Okay, what else have we got?
Oh, okay, Linda, do you think that the triangular-shaped craft or the boomerang-shaped craft may have been related to the UFO flap over the northeast tri-state area in the late 1980s? I think it was called the Hudson Valley flap, if I remember rightly.
Well, I know I saw one of those personally myself, and it was so huge. It was a boomerang, and it had multiple, as I recall, I counted 5 or 6 layers. They were distinct layers, structural layers. The way you would look at, say, a hotel, and you would see the balconies coming up, and it flew low. It was so low over me that it really did take up most of the sky above me. And I've told that story in detail. I was in Denver, had been to a film production meeting in a bank in Aurora, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver, and was leaving the bank, had my briefcase over my right shoulder filled with script stuff, and was walking toward my car, and it was in November, I think it was November 5th or 6th in 1986, and the sky was this beautiful mauve color with the Rocky Mountains silhouetted. And I was just thinking how beautiful it was as I was walking toward my car when I literally spun and my briefcase hit a car. I spun around so hard. And instead of looking directly behind me, I was looking up as I spun. Something, I don't know what. I don't remember hearing anything, but it was like something just took me and made sure I turned around and looked up. And there was this huge boomerang, multi-leveled, coming back. And at the end of each of, however you want to call it, at the ends of a boomerang that went up to a thicker middle with all of these layers, and then they trailed off at the end. Because I used to have, from age 4 on, I loved crystals. And my dad helped me build up a big quart crystal. And I was extremely aware of what a quart crystal looks like. And the back, at the ends of the boomerang, they were faceted. I don't mean they were clear, and I don't mean that they looked like they were made out of crystal. What I mean is whatever this huge boomerang was made out of, which was kind of, in my memory, as I see it now in my mind's eye, it would be like a burnished metal. It's, in a way, it kind of reminds me of what Stacey Rhodes was trying to talk about, gunmetal. But this had a brownish sheen to it, clearly had a brownish sheen, and then ended up in these facets. I've never seen anything in my life before or since like this facet, the facets, huge facets at the end of this boomerang. And there was not a sound. It's like Stacey Rhodes and the people in Phoenix back in March 13th of 1997, my same reaction in 1986. Anything that is so big that you would have to put your arms up like this, and essentially you're not even seeing the sky, it was so big. How does it go over you so low that I could see details? I could see details in the layers, and not one sound. In fact, it was the other. It was like the atmosphere was drenched of sound, like everything became more silent. And it literally, I just stood there watching in stun, and it just kept going slowly, and it literally sort of evaporated in the sense of it got distant out beyond the bank parking lot lights, and then it just sort of started to blend into the twilight evening sky as it went on. You know, as soon as I got back to my home office, I sketched I have a notebook somewhere that has that sketch with those quartz facet looking. And I called a man who worked for doing illustrations for magazines that were like the professional military, where they would be covering what are the latest developments in various airplanes. That's what he did for a living. And he was a good friend to me and to several people also interested in UFOs. And I told him what had happened and I had drawn the illustration, which I ended up sending to him. And his comment was that, no, that was not the mysterious, then at the time, secret B-1 bomber. It wasn't Aurora. It wasn't, he gave me all the reasons why what I was describing was not any of those, and that he could not provide any kind of a professional military answer for something that would be that big. And he said, honestly, you had to separate your arms out 3 or 4 feet. I said, yes, and even then, it's still like when Stacy said you couldn't see the edges. It was so big. So,
yeah, Linda, we've got Don K. Johnson in the chat. He's reporting some of his sightings. He saw a craft 15 miles east of Kingham, Arizona, 6 blue-purple engines about 200 feet above him, and he could actually see a circuit board on the bottom, he says.
A circuit board. Was it like the Borg that Stacy, her daughter, her friend, her mother, and they all said in that car, the 5 of them, that they were seeing lines that they reminded them of the Borg in Star Trek, or some very grooved in advanced airplanes. I wonder if that's what they mean in terms of circuit board.
I've reached out to him and I've asked him to contact us. He also talks about another fascinating time when he was traveling in his vehicle and he had an impossible time jump. So I've asked him to reach out to us and give us some more information on that.
Did the time go forward or backward?
He said his time went faster. He covered a mile in 32 seconds. It was too fast for his aging Nissan car.
Time manipulation is one of the biggest factors of the whole UFO phenomena. It is so difficult for humans because we are in our track. We're in our timeline. We don't know how to chop it up. We don't know how to split it. We don't know how to grab from the past and put it in the future and the future to the past. But when you get to these advanced civilizations that are there, and you talk with engineers and scientists who know all about what they're doing, you are talking with temporal, which is time, temporal technology that is so advanced and startling. And then you begin to look at the stars in the sky at night with a completely different way, as I have, that if you knew or had that temporal technology, you could stand on your terrace and in a few minutes be at a planet around another star if you had the temporal technology.
Ron Johnson has just replied. He says his circuit board that he saw had sparks and electricity arcing crawling on the bottom. So there's a little bit more detail.
I've never heard that before, but I would welcome either to you or to Earthfiles an illustration of what it was that he saw that was to him a circuit board, and how the electricity or whatever he was seeing, what was the color, what part of the design was it in?
Okay, let's hope that he'll respond to us and let us know more details.
Well, let's
Linda,
take one more question.
Enforce as well that we've still got a little bit of time for people to send their video questions
if
they want to for the 2-hour show coming up for next week.
Yeah, we had March 16th as our deadline for you to get in your video recordings to us. And people have been sending them through email to Earthfiles, but we would like them to go to questions@earthfiles.com, right, Brad? That's it. And then Ian is going to receive at that questions@earthfiles.com, and Brad will be working putting them together. So whatever you would like to send, get it to questions@earthfiles.com, and we'll have fun putting them together for next Wednesday.
It's a special 2-hour show.
Yes, and Lou Elizondo and I will be doing an interview that will be the special segment in that 2-hour show next Wednesday, March 23rd. So everybody, everywhere, come to that celebration with all of us to, I guess basically it's like a digital hug that we have broken through 201,000 subscribers and growing. And it is a good feeling at a time that is as troubled as this one. Ian, do we have one more question?
Well, this question, I don't know how you can wrap this up, but she says, it's a question from Linda Emeterio. She says, after so many remote viewers have revealed what will unfold over the next 10 years, how are you preparing for upcoming events, and how should we prepare?
You know, I was thinking about that this weekend and realized this is the truth. I see how people have been building underground structures where they live in tornado valleys, and we watch the horror of what's happening in the Ukraine. And every time I think, what should I be doing? The truth is, I'm doing what I love doing the most, which is exploring mysteries related to other life in the universe and what's happening on this earth. And that it takes up so much time to do phone calls and meetings and production and editing and writing, that to do anything else, to try to survive longer in the future, it's like I just am going to keep doing what I do as long as I possibly can and not try to worry too much about what is coming. My antidote is always the same as I have shared with you for the last 4 years. When I want to feel connected to higher force that might be able to help us, I go stand in the sunlight and I try to breathe in the photons. It is an exercise of literally feeling like I'm breathing in the light. And I repeat what was given to me in the mountains in Idaho when I was 21 years old. I'm one with the light. The light is one with me, and I'm in the hands of God. Help us, dear divine field, thought that dwells in the light. Help this entire planet. Help humans, help animals, help marine animals, help earth life to get past this rocky, difficult time. Because if we could all live together in collaboration with the earth, it would finally be heaven on earth. I love you guys. See you next week for the big celebration.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white Settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC,
I say, you want to get a comb?
and then select Auto Translate.
And I don't have to put them in
Select a language,
bind them anywhere. They love
and the captions will now appear in that language.
sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.